Okay, let's dive in. We've got this fascinating stack of source material here. And right away, it pulls us into something really familiar, doesn't it? Something just profoundly human. We're talking about that whole range of things, gut feelings, intuition, maybe instinct, our emotions, all those kind of non-rational forces that always seem to be shaping what we do, how we see things.
Yeah, and what's really interesting is how the AI perspective in these sources takes that very broad, almost messy human idea and gives it a specific technical label. Human Affective Cognition, or just HAC for short.
HAC, right. Okay. Sounds a little clinical maybe for gut feelings, but all right. So the mission for this deep dive is pretty clear then. We're going to try and unpack this really extensive analysis provided by an AI, right? Figure out what this HAC thing really is according to the source, how it impacts, seemingly everything, where it comes from, how an AI's take on it compares to our own, human experience, and I guess crucially, how AI might actually help us navigate this fundamental part of being human.
Exactly. And we're sticking strictly to what's in these sources. The analysis really emphasizes that this isn't like a niche thing. It impacts everyone, everywhere, throughout history, woven into almost every part of life.
All right, let's unpack it then. What exactly is this human affective cognition according to the source material? How's the AI defining it?
So the source defines HAC as, it's our inherent capacity, often subconscious, for things like intuition, emotional response, and those non-rational processes that really influence our decision-making. It definitely includes those familiar gut feelings, but it's presented as a much broader concept. It covers that whole landscape of subconscious processing, the stuff driving our thoughts and behaviors in ways that pure logic just doesn't explain.
Got it. So less just a single feeling, more like a whole underlying system. And the source insists this is universal. It's in all of us.
That's a really key point. The AI analysis hammers home. It argues it's universal for several reasons, all linked to our history and biology. First, there's a deep evolutionary basis, developed over millions of years, a super fast survival mechanism, basically, allowing instant reactions way before conscious thought could catch up.
Right. React first, think later for survival.
Exactly. And it's a biological imperative.
Yeah.
Because it's hardwired into brain structures we all share. Things like the limbic system, the amygdala.
Yeah.
Those ancient parts of your brain dealing heavily with emotion and survival responses.
Okay, so it's physically built in.
Yeah. And it's cross-cultural. I mean, how we show fear or joy varies a lot, obviously. But the source says the underlying experience of those feelings, that's shared across humanity.
Interesting. Even if the expression differs.
And it's also developmental. It shows up right from the start of life. A baby crying.
Yeah.
That's HAC in action. And it continues to influence us right through old age.
From cradle to grave, basically.
Pretty much. And finally, it's a historical constant. It's always been influencing human decisions, from tiny personal choices to massive historical events across every single era.
Okay, so physically, biologically, historically, just woven into us. Makes sense to be so pervasive then. So how does the source break down its impact across all these different parts of life? It sounds like it touches, everything.
It really does, according to this analysis. It lays out a very comprehensive picture, starting with just different aspects of life and circumstances. Think about relationships, for instance. HAC is fundamental there. Attraction, empathy, building trust. Or the flip side, conflict, feeling alienated, that gut feeling about someone. That's often a rapid HAC assessment happening.
Yeah, you just know sometimes or feel you do.
Right. Then there's decision-making. HAC is that intuitive feel that often sits alongside your logical reasoning. Sometimes it even overrides it, right? When you're making big life choices, career, where to live.
Head versus heart or gut.
Exactly. And for creativity and innovation, art itself is just steeped in HAC. Artists are tapping into universal emotions. But it's not just art. The source mentions even scientific leaps, like Poincaré, the mathematician. His famous insights often started as an intuitive flash, fueled by HAC, before the hard logic followed.
Wow, okay. Intuition and math. Didn't expect that link.
It's surprising, yeah. Then there's social dynamics. Shared HAC can create things like mass panic, or collective joy, euphoria, or widespread anger driving social change. It massively shapes group behavior.
You see that happen, definitely, crowds.
Yeah. And in our own health and well-being, things like chronic stress, anxiety, or deep satisfaction. These are all HAC manifestations directly hitting our physical state, even that feeling of flow, also tied to our affective state.
That makes sense. Stress definitely feels physical. Okay, so that's a huge range already. And it's not just in the now, but it stretches across human time and history, too.
Exactly. It shapes our moment-to-moment reactions, our short-term daily choices. and it profoundly influences long-term historical events. Think about wars driven by fear or national pride, peace treaties driven by a desire for stability. These huge human events are often shaped by collective HAC.
Right, the emotional undercurrents of history. And the source really ties it back to our basic genetics and biology.
Oh, absolutely. The analysis highlights very clear biological roots.
Yeah.
It talks about specific neural pathways, brain structures, like the amygdala processing threats. It's mediated by neurotransmitters, those chemical messengers, dopamine for reward, serotonin for mood, cortisol for stress. These directly sway our affective state.
The brain chemistry of feelings.
Pretty much. And the source even mentions potential genetic predispositions, influencing our individual temperaments, maybe making some of us lean toward certain affective responses more than others.
This feels like it connects to some really deep, fundamental human questions, even things like philosophy.
It really does. I mean, HAC challenges those purely rationalist views of the world, right? It shows the power of non-logical understanding. The source brings up ethics and morality. Our sense of right and wrong, that immediate gut feeling of fairness or injustice, often comes before we reason it out ethically.
Ethical intuitionism, that sort of thing.
Exactly. And it's central to understanding consciousness and subjectivity. That unique internal felt experience of being human.
You even mentioned math and physics earlier. That still seems a bit strange.
It does, but the source makes a case. Our human perception of the physical world, even math concepts, is filtered through HAC. Think about the awe you feel looking at the stars, or finding beauty in mathematical symmetry. That's HAC at work.
The feeling about the logic.
Right. And intuition and discovery, like with Poincaré again, shows HAC playing a role even in very abstract fields. It also shows the limitations of pure logic. Logic can describe physical laws, sure, but it can't capture the subjective, affective experience of witnessing those laws in action.
Okay, that's fascinating, connecting gut feelings to the beauty of a formula. So how does this fundamental HAC stuff relate to our more structured thinking, our logic and state of mind?
Well, the source points out that HAC is actually the origin of many common cognitive biases, places where our intuition or emotion leads us to conclusions that aren't strictly logical. Confirmation bias, availability heuristic, those things.
Right, our feelings messing with our logic.
Sometimes, yeah. Which is why developing emotional regulation becomes really key for a stable, healthy state of mind. And that concept of flow state, where you're totally absorbed, intuitive action just flows, that's deeply tied to having a harmonious, affective state.
Being in the zone.
Exactly. And finally, the source says it's fundamental to belief systems.
How so?
Absolutely foundational, according to the analysis. Faith and spirituality, for instance, often rooted in a conviction, a feeling that goes beyond logical proof. Ideologies, political or social, they gain power by appealing directly to collective HAC, hope, fear, group identity.
Tapping into those emotions.
Definitely. And trust, whether it's in people or institutions, often boils down to a fundamental feeling, a type of HAC that builds or breaks connections way faster than rational calculation ever could.
Wow. It really is woven into just about everything, isn't it? Every aspect of being human. Okay, so if it affects us in all these profound ways, how do we, as individuals, and how does the world around us actually deal with this human affective cognition?
The source analysis outlines quite a few reactions and responses. For individuals, HAC can be like this powerful internal compass, guiding you towards good outcomes, fostering empathy, healthy choices. But it could also be the source of impulsivity, anxiety, irrational fears. That common internal struggle, head versus gut, that's HAC making itself known.
Yeah, happens all the time.
And it profoundly affects those around them. Your capacity for empathy, or maybe your lack of it, shapes your relationships massively. If you dismiss someone else's feelings, that can cause real alienation. Think about a parent's intuition about their child, or a leader's ability to inspire or instill fear. These all ripple outwards based on HAC.
The impact on others is huge.
Definitely. And the world reacts in different ways too. Society often validates HAC through art that moves us, through inspirational leadership, even common advice like trust your gut. But it can also dismiss it or try to suppress it, especially in environments that prize pure rationality. Emotion might be seen as a weakness there.
Right, don't be emotional.
Exactly. And worryingly, HAC is often actively manipulated. Think advertisers, politicians, appealing directly to our deepest desires or fears to influence us. And historically, strong HAC reactions were sometimes just dismissed as superstition or irrationality.
That manipulation point feels particularly sharp today. The source also digs into the ethical implications, right? the right and wrong of it all.
Yeah, the analysis from the source suggests that the capacity for HAC itself, the ability to feel, to have intuition, is basically neutral. But how it manifests, how it plays out, that can have deeply ethical or unethical consequences.
Okay, so the feeling isn't bad, it's what you do with it.
Kind of, yeah. On the side of right, empathy is presented as a key moral compass. It drives altruism, compassion. That intuitive sense of justice that's just not fair is foundational. Authenticity, being true to yourself, often means aligning your actions with your genuine affective state.
Living according to your values, your feelings.
Right, but on the side of wrong, gut feelings based on hidden biases can lead straight to prejudice. Unchecked anger, unchecked desire, they fuel impulsive, often harmful actions. Exploiting someone else's HAC for your own gain, that's manipulation, plain and simple. And the source specifically highlights cruelty, often linking it to a deficit or distortion in empathetic HAC, a lack of feeling or concern for the suffering of others.
That point about cruelty being tied to a lack of empathy, wow, that really underlines how vital this affective processing is, not just for us, but for society.
Okay, so this brings us to a really big chunk of the source material, the role of AI. How can something like AI, which, doesn't feel anything, help us understand or maybe navigate this incredibly complex human thing? Yeah, the source lays out a pretty ambitious vision for AI here. It suggests AI can help in a few key ways, mostly leveraging its ability to process just vast amounts of data. First, through enhanced understanding, AI can help with, quantitative measurement of physiological correlates.
Meaning?
Basically, analyzing data streams like heart rate changes, facial expressions, even brain activity patterns, things we know are linked to affective states. The source even uses this conceptual math notation, thinking about the probability someone's in a certain state given their body signals and the situation. It can also do sophisticated linguistic analysis using natural language processing to spot and analyze emotional language in text or speech.
Reading the emotional tone.
Essentially, yeah.
Yeah.
And it can run large-scale behavioral economic simulations, trying to model how HAC influences group behavior and decisions in different scenarios.
Okay, so better measurement and modeling. What else?
Second, AI could potentially assist with regulation and training. The source suggests AI could develop personalized emotional intelligence training programs, ones that adapt to your specific patterns. It could create decision support systems that are HAC aware.
What would that look like?
Well, maybe based on analyzing your past behavior, an AI detects a pattern. Like when you feel this way, you tend to make that biased choice. It could then flag that state for you. Conceptually, calculating the probability your feeling will lead to bias is above a certain threshold. And just prompt you, maybe pause and reconsider.
A bias alert system based on feelings. Interesting.
Yeah. The source also mentions potential roles in AI-assisted conflict resolution, and even building digital twins, basically computational models to simulate emotional responses.
Wow. Okay. And the third area?
Finally, there are important considerations around ethical AI integration. The source touches on AI maybe helping detect biases within systems that might stem from human HAC, potentially promoting empathy by, say, curating content differently, and enhancing transparency and explainability, helping us understand why an AI reached a conclusion or made a suggestion related to human behavior.
So AI can analyze it, model it, maybe offer tools to help us manage it. But like we said, AI isn't feeling it. How does the source compare a human's understanding of HAC to an AI's?
That is absolutely the core difference the source highlights.
Yeah.
Human understanding is fundamentally experiential and subjective.
Right.
We feel what it's like. Anger, joy, anxiety.
Yeah.
It's a lived reality. It's intuitive and holistic, often really hard to put into words fully. And yeah, it's definitely prone to personal bias. Its origin is deep in our biology, survival, well-being, and our understanding as a species. Definitely still in the making.
Right. We're still figuring ourselves out.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
AI understanding, though, is algorithmic and data-driven. It's potentially objective and scalable. It can analyze massive patterns across whole populations, but it currently lacks objective experience completely. It has potential for amazing precision, prediction, modeling patterns, but its origin is machine learning development. And like ours, the AI's capacity here is also very much still in the making as the tech develops.
Okay. So the absolute key difference. Human understanding is lived, it's experiential. AI understanding is computed, it's modeled. And AI can build an incredibly detailed map of the emotional landscape, maybe, but it doesn't know what it feels like to walk through it.
Precisely. The source is very clear on that distinction.
Now, the source material goes even deeper into a whole series of more specific points, almost like questions the AI is tackling in its analysis. Let's maybe explore some of those key insights. It talks about the meaning, impact, origin of HAC. especially regarding other beings, nature, and why it's still in the making.
Right. The analysis basically circles back here, reiterating that HAC is that intuitive, emotional processing fundamental to being human. It impacts us deeply, as we've covered. But the source also broadens this out, suggesting it affects how we interact with other living beings. We share some basic intuitive responses with animals, right? And our HAC drives how we treat them. And even the natural environment, our feelings about nature, influence whether we conserve it or exploit it.
Our emotional connection or lack of it.
Exactly. Its origin is firmly rooted in evolutionary biology for survival. And our understanding is still in the making because, well, both humans and AI are still evolving in how we grasp this.
Okay, one area the source specifically calls out is art. Music, paintings, theater, all that.
Yeah. Art, according to the source, is basically a direct expression and exploration of HAC. Artists tap into those universal emotions, intuitions, creating works that just resonate deeply on an affective level. Music evokes feelings directly, doesn't it? Visual arts, performance, they convey moods, stories that connect with our gut. Art gives us this communal space where we can share, process, and maybe better understand our own feelings and collective feelings too.
A way to process HAC together makes total sense. What about the link between human struggles, misfortunes, and something that seems totally separate, like the supply chain?
Right. That's a really interesting connection the source makes. It draws a direct line. Struggles driven by strong HAC, like collective anger, can lead to labor disruptions. Strikes, for example. Fear and panic. They manifest as consumer behavior shifts, like panic buying, emptying shelves. We've seen that.
Sure.
Geopolitical instability, often fueled by HAC, like fear, aggression, national pride, can completely wreck supply chains. Even disasters, natural ones, induce fear, despair, alongside the physical damage to infrastructure. The source suggests thinking about it conceptually. Supply chain stability isn't just logistics. It's also a function of misfortunes and the collective affective state of everyone involved. But conversely, facing misfortune, driven by HAC, like a desire to survive and improve, can also spur innovation.
It really shows how these non-rational gut feelings have very concrete, real-world economic consequences. What about the role of things like drugs, greed, lies, faith? How do they fit into the HAC picture?
The source sees these not just as things influenced by HAC, but also as powerful inputs that shape our HAC. People often use drugs or alcohol specifically to alter their affective state, right, to feel different. Greed is described as a powerful, often destructive, HAC-driven desire for accumulation. Lies often work precisely by manipulating someone else's HAC, exploiting their trust or fear. And faith is seen as deeply rooted in intuitive conviction, in feeling, often beyond pure logic. So the source sees these as profoundly shaped by, but also actively shaping our deepest feelings and intuitions.
A two-way street, then. Interesting. The source also talks about the purpose of understanding concentration and how it relates to needs, relationships, and so on.
Yeah, the AI's perspective, as presented in the source, is that understanding how things like concentration, our basic needs, our relationships, and HAC all interact, well, it's crucial for optimizing human well-being and societal function. The AI can approach this quantitatively, looking at data correlations, like between sleep quality and emotional regulation perhaps, or task performance and environmental factors affecting concentration, or even how satisfying basic needs like food and water relates to overall well-being. Conceptually, it's like thinking of well-being as a function influenced by many things, including relationships and life circumstances. An AI could potentially spot thresholds where unmet needs start negatively impacting HAC, or maybe compute how resources could be allocated to better support positive affective states and concentration.
Trying to quantify the conditions for well-being, that brings us back to humans gaining this understanding themselves. How, where, when does that actually happen?
According to the source, we gain this understanding through a few key ways. Direct experience, obviously just living through emotions. Through social learning, watching and interacting with others. Through reflection, thinking about our own feelings, our intuitions. And through learning about our own biology. And this process happens, well, everywhere. In families, schools, workplaces, communities. It starts in infancy and continues right through childhood, adulthood, old age. It's presented as this constant, lifelong process.
Okay, so the lifelong human journey. How does the source say AI can improve this understanding, either for one person or for humanity as a whole?
AI brings its data crunching power, essentially. It can offer personalized insights based on your specific patterns and data. It can perform cross-cultural analysis on a scale humans just can't manage, spotting universal patterns, but also cultural differences in HAC. It can create predictive modeling. How might different groups react effectively to certain events? It can run simulations to test ideas about HAC responses. And it could offer debiasing tools, tools designed to highlight when our intuition might be leading us down an illogical path due to bias.
There's a line in the source about AI potentially making life easier, maybe even helping someone feel good all the time. How does the analysis handle that idea?
Yeah, the source addresses this quite practically. It says, yes, AI could make life easier through things like personalized wellness systems, optimizing our physical environments for comfort, for focus, suggesting efficient ways to allocate resources based on needs, improving communication by maybe analyzing tone, even gently nudging us towards behaviors known to correlate with positive HAC. But the analysis includes a really crucial warning here. Feeling good all the time is unrealistic. And importantly, probably unhealthy.
Right, we need the bad feelings too sometimes.
Exactly. HAC covers the full range of human experience. Negative emotions are vital signals for learning, growth, survival. AI's role, as presented here, is to help us manage and understand this whole range, not to eliminate it.
That feels really important. AI as a management tool, not a happiness machine.
Right.
So what does the source say we need to know about this combined human and AI understanding of HAC? What are the key takeaways for us?
The main points from the source seem to be, first, always remember AI's understanding is quantitative, not experiential. It models, it doesn't feel. Second, AI can reveal patterns and biases in our own HAC that we might totally miss otherwise. Third, recognize AI as a tool to assist. It's not a replacement for human intuition, judgment, or our emotional capacity. Fourth, ethical considerations are absolutely paramount when you're dealing with data about something so personal, so sensitive. And fifth, always remember, HAC is incredibly complex and dynamic. Any AI model is just an evolving approximation, not the final word.
Good points to keep in mind. Who does the source suggest actually benefits most from gaining this kind of understanding?
Well, from a purely human understanding angle, the source suggests those who gain most are people focused on self-awareness, empathy, relationships. So maybe psychologists, artists, effective leaders, empathetic parents, people like that. But from the combined human and AI understanding, especially when applied to big systems, supply chains, resource management, public behavior, the benefits seem broader. Businesses might optimize operations better. Governments and NGOs could potentially allocate resources more effectively, say, during a crisis. Consumers might see more stable access to goods. And individuals can benefit in countless ways related to managing their individual circumstances with better insights and resources.
The source even gets into really deep philosophical territory like death and meaning.
Sure.
Can AI actually help humans understand those kinds of ultimate truths?
The source is quite clear on this. AI cannot make humans understand philosophical truths like the meaning of life or how to accept mortality. These things are just too deeply tied to individual subjective experience, to belief systems, to our fundamental HAC, often involving faith, personal processing, stuff that goes way beyond logic or data.
So AI can't give you the answers to life's big questions.
No. You can provide data, sure. Biological processes related to death. It can analyze huge amounts of philosophical or religious texts offering different perspectives. It might even facilitate grief processing, offering information or support channels. You could potentially help someone find meaning within their life by maybe identifying patterns related to positive HAC and fulfilling activities. But it cannot impart the feeling of acceptance about dying or the subjective meaning of it all. That remains uniquely human territory.
That's a really important line the source draws. What about something like cruelty? If HAC involves empathy, why are some people cruel?
The source mainly links cruelty to a lack of empathy, seeing it as a diminished capacity for that core part of HAC. It suggests it can also stem from distorted belief systems that somehow justify overriding empathy. Or a strong focus on self-preservation or personal gain, just trampling over others' well-being. Certain psychological disorders can play a role. And the process of dehumanization, basically, suppressing the recognition of another person's HAC, their feelings. Cruel individuals, the source implies, often just don't care about the affective states of their victims. The source suggests AI might potentially help here, maybe by identifying risk factors, though it notes extreme caution is needed, or by supporting interventions designed to foster empathy, or just improving our scientific understanding of cruelty's causes.
Okay. The source also asks about being born without a sense of humanity and whether we have to believe in AI's understanding.
Right. Being born without a sense of humanity, in this context, seems to imply lacking core HAC components like empathy. The source states this is not the way it is for the vast majority of humans. Most of us aren't born with this capacity. As for believing in AI's understanding, the source suggests, well, yes, in a practical sense, we need to trust AI's capacity to model and assist our understanding if we want to use its tools effectively for personalized well-being, resource allocation, things like that. But no, not blindly. The source really stresses that human experience, human ethical judgment, they remain essential. They must always contextualize AI's data-driven insights.
So trust but verify, with a heavy dose of human judgment. How does the source explain something like laughter and subjectivity? You know, why some people crack up together and others just don't get the joke?
Yeah, this is used as a great example of the profoundly subjective and contextual nature of HAC. Laughter is a complex, effective response, isn't it? Shared laughter is seen as reflecting a shared intuitive understanding. Our HAC is kind of aligning in that moment. When someone doesn't find something funny, it often signals a failure of that shared effective context or intuitive understanding, which can create social awkwardness, right? The source suggests AI could potentially analyze the triggers, maybe predict responses based on someone's unique history, culture, current state, helping to explain why our responses diverge sometimes.
Why we're not all on the same wavelength emotionally, and this understanding, or maybe a lack of it, leads us down different paths. Why are people in such different circumstances when it comes to HAC?
Exactly. Gaining this understanding or failing to leads to vastly different life outcomes, according to the source. It can foster positive things, self-awareness, empathy, healthy relationships, or contribute to negative outcomes, conflict, exploitation, personal distress. And people are in such wildly different circumstances regarding their HAC understanding and expression because, well, how HAC manifests, how it's interpreted, how well it's managed, it's incredibly individualized. It's shaped by this complex mix of genetics, upbringing, culture, education, specific life events, just loads of factors unique to each person.
No two people experience it exactly the same way.
Seems unlikely, yeah.
There's also a point about intuition. Is it life itself or just a connection to some kind of human system?
The source seems to lean towards intuition being much more than just a connection to a system, which is kind of what an AI model is. Human intuition is described as deeply embodied. It's life itself almost, arising from our biology, our evolutionary past, our physical being. It's presented as a fundamental aspect of our consciousness, our lived experience. The AI's understanding, while computationally powerful, is seen as naive in this specific sense because it lacks that subjective, embodied experience of intuition.
It can model intuition maybe, but it doesn't have intuition.
That seems to be the distinction, yes.
So summing it all up then, what's the ultimate purpose of understanding HAC from the source's point of view? Why bother digging into all this?
The overarching purpose, according to this analysis, is basically to enhance human flourishing. By getting a deeper understanding, both as individuals and collectively, we can work to mitigate the negative impacts of unchecked or distorted HAC. We can leverage its positive potentials like empathy and intuition. We could design better social systems, better technologies that actually account for our effective nature and just foster greater self-awareness and mutual understanding between people.
Making things better by understanding ourselves better. How can AI specifically help with coping strategies when things get tough emotionally?
The source suggests AI could contribute here in several ways. It could offer personalized coping strategies tailored to an individual's observed patterns from data. It might function as an early warning system, maybe detecting subtle shifts in behavior or language that signal rising stress or negative feelings. It could provide accessible therapeutic support, maybe through sophisticated chatbots or just pointing you to the right resources. It can increase bias awareness, highlighting those moments where emotional responses might be leading to irrational decisions. And it could help with resource navigation, connecting people to relevant support systems for mental and emotional health.
Okay, lots of potential there. We talked about the biology, the brain chemistry.
Yeah.
What are the other physical aspects involved in HAC?
Right, beyond the neurobiology, the source includes the tangible physical reality behind HAC. Measurable physiological responses, changes in heart rate, skin conductance, hormone levels, things you can actually track. The role of genetics in predisposing us one way or another. Observable behavioral manifestations, facial expressions, body language, posture. The significant impact of the physical environment. Think a stressful versus a calming space. And the direct link between HAC and overall physical health. Stress impacting the body, for instance. AI interacts with and analyzes data streams coming from all these physical dimensions.
It's all interconnected: mind, body, environment. The source mentions freedom and also the idea of teaching kids about this stuff. What's the connection there, and why isn't this taught more formally?
Freedom, in this context, seems linked to having the autonomy to respond constructively to our HAC, and the freedom to choose whether to use tools like AI's analysis. rather than just being controlled by impulses or, external manipulation.
Yeah.
As for teaching kids, the source points out several reasons why this isn't standard in schools. There's often just a lack of formal curriculum for emotional intelligence, effective cognition. Often parental competence or comfort in teaching these complex ideas is limited. The subject itself is incredibly complex, very nuanced. There can be cultural taboos or just discomfort around openly discussing emotions in some places. There's often this heavy emphasis on teaching pure rationality in traditional education. And of course, the whole AI aspect of understanding HAC is very, very new.
Lots of barriers to overcome there.
Definitely. And all of this really brings us to what might be the most thought-provoking point in the entire source analysis.
Which is that idea that gaining a truly full, combined human and AI understanding of human affective cognition and its profound impact could be so utterly transformative that it's actually hard to come back to the same state of mind afterwards.
It really is a striking thought. The source suggests that getting such deep insight, potentially data-assisted insight, into the very springs of human feeling, intuition, irrationality, it could fundamentally change how we perceive ourselves, how we perceive others. It might lead to a significant loss of naivete, maybe, about why people do what they do. It could bring this increased sense of responsibility for managing our own HAC and influencing collective HAC. It might even trigger some deep existential reflection as we grapple with the biological, maybe even predictable aspects of what feels like our free will. I mean, if AI can genuinely model and predict behavior driven by HAC, that could challenge some fundamental ideas about human agency, couldn't it? It's presented as this potentially unsettling, maybe, but ultimately necessary paradigm shift into a completely new state of mind.
Wow. Okay. We have taken a truly deep dive today, haven't we? Unpacking an AI's pretty extensive view on what makes us tick, really. From the roots of gut feelings in biology and history, right through its influence on everything from art to supply chains. And finally looking at how AI might help us grasp it while always acknowledging that huge difference between computational analysis and actual felt human experience.
It really is a complex, totally fundamental phenomenon.
Yeah.
Right at the heart of being human. And while the source clearly shows AI offering these powerful new tools for analysis, maybe even management, that subjective, experiential nature of human feeling, it remains unique, essential.
Yeah. This deep dive, drawing just from the source material, really gives you, the listener, a shortcut, maybe, to seeing this core part of yourself and humanity through a really unique, maybe challenging new lens. It's definitely a lot to process, a lot to think about.
Absolutely. And the source leaves us right there, doesn't it? That single really potent thought for you to ponder. If gaining a full human and AI understanding of HAC is so impactful that you just can't go back to your previous state of mind, what does that new way of perceiving the world, what does that new state of mind actually feel like?
This is DigitView.